So we are in Michelle Pender's exclusive listing here in Russian Hill at 1089 Chestnut. This place is amazing. I saw pictures online, saw some virtual tours, doesn't even do it a smidgen of justice. So thanks, Michelle, for having me in here.
Thank you so much
The
for
first
being
question
here.
I asked Michelle, which I think is unique to her because she's in this unique position, and it's not a matter of if this property sells, this property will sell. But when you sell a property like this, when you look back, people should take note. How does an agent sell a luxury listing like this? Because some real estate, we talked about, sells itself. Other real estate has to be sold, so the agent's really got to work. But in a property like this, you can't just sit back. You're looking for a needle in a haystack. How do you find that one buyer in the globe to buy this property?
That's a very good question, and that is why having a really strategic marketing plan makes all the difference. Luxury properties in this price point could take months to sell, or longer, or it could sell instantaneously, right? It's about the right buyer connecting with the home and saying, this is the one for me. Will we have a bidding war for a home like this? We won't. We'll have a buyer who appreciates all the updates, the incredible design element. This was designed by Jeff Schlarb. It's one of his most iconic homes that he's designed, and it's simply stunning. So back to what I was saying, a very strategic, important marketing plan is absolutely of paramount importance. We do digital, we do print, we have international marketing at Engel Volkers. We're truly global. So you'll see us at our shop fronts. We'll be in windows. We're in the streaming video that goes on in every office. We have a phenomenal photographer and videographer who came here to create a stunning representation of the property, which, to your point, still doesn't do it justice because it's such a gorgeous property.
Yeah, I can tell you
Thank you. We have a fantastic video where we interview Jeff Schlarb, the designer, personally to get his take on his inspiration and how he came up with the concepts and the design element which he came up with. And it was so interesting to learn about his perspective and how he came up with these incredible ideas and how to really liven up the spaces. We do social media. We have advertisements that we paid for. We have reached out to neighbors. We did a neighbors only preview because neighbors often have friends that they want to invite into their neighborhood.
Sure.
So that was effective. We did a preview launch party. I was
going to ask about events. Yeah, are you doing events?
We're doing
social
events.
things?
It was a big social party extravaganza where we had over 100 people come by, people who could possibly purchase the place. And it was received magnificently. Not a single person left going, oh, this is not for me. Everybody loved the house. Not everybody is in the market to buy a house like this.
Right.
So, this takes a lot of strategic marketing, much more than a standard home in San Francisco under $3 million, which will sell, in 2 to 3 weeks. This is this very special house with incredible views, bridge-to-bridge views, 5 bedrooms, 5 en suites. It's just a stunning entertainer's home, but it's also the perfect family home. So you can raise children while having this wonderful palette to entertain dear friends, colleagues, and whatnot.
And a chic man cave, which you don't use those 2 words in the same sentence.
I love that you put those 2 words together.
That's 3 words, chic, man, and cave. Those are 3 words, but that is definitely how I would describe the man cave on the top floor.
I think you're chic.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Right back at you. So in a luxury listing like this is obviously something that's of its own standalone, unique brand. And it's really important when, an owner of a property like this hires an agent. They can't just hire any agent because they're going to have to hire an agent that is operating on the same level in terms of brand and sophistication and how they stand alone. And your brand, you and I are good friends. We talk about it all the time. Your brand stands alone. It's very unique. It's not duplicated. It stands on its own. And that matches this type of a property, this type of real estate, right? And it's on par. So, it's a natural marriage for you, is it?
I love unique, beautiful properties. I think I'm unique. Pender Vision came to me because I have to wear glasses. I'm visually impaired. And what better excuse to buy fantastic glasses when you could just brand your glasses collection and the fact that I have great vision for my clients. I say I have 20/20 vision for my clients relative to the real estate market. So Pender Vision is 20/20, and it's just really fantastic to create a brand that works with, a chic clientele.
When people pick a realtor, it's like, even though it's a realtor for life, so it is like picking a life partner, but in a different sense. This is someone who's going to be a strategist and an advocate for you and, finding your place, which is going to be the biggest piece of debt you're going to take on in your life, unless you pay cash for it. It's one of the biggest assets you'll have. So picking somebody, it's really, really important in how they go about doing that. But to your point, the brand, the style, the aesthetic, the vision, which you get to uniquely say, but people can also broadly say it, has to line up with the client. Not just anyone can sell a unique property like this. And a unique property like this can't just find any, can't find any agent, right?
That's correct.
So it's got to match up on par, but your brand is obviously in line with this type of a property, so it seems like a very, very natural fit. And it's clearly evidenced by how you've listed it. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. We are obviously sitting in a very unique spot, which is a luxury piece of real estate, but the topic we're gonna discuss may not feel like it matches with the environment that we're speaking from, but it doesn't matter because Michelle and I talk real estate and trends in any setting. It doesn't matter. I mean, we just took pictures in a bathtub, so, we can do it anywhere. But serious topic that we have touched on a lot is COVID obviously has ransacked the city on a different level. And we can't really ignore it anymore, and it's uncomfortable for some people to talk about, but there is obviously a massive issue systemically in the way of homelessness, in the way of social decay, if you want to call it, like things have deteriorated, right? And people know this. I'm not shocking anyone by saying this. Like, look at any travel blog or travel website of tourists that have visited San Francisco recently. They'll say, like, I would never go back. They have a horror story. Some of them sadly have had tragic stories happen, which, needs to be talked about. It gets swept under the rug, but these are real things that are happening. So you and I have talked, at some point, this is gonna come to a head with real estate. And in some cases, maybe it already has. Are you having conversations with people that ask this question if they're buying from outside or if they're contemplated selling, and maybe it's a reason or a catalyst for why they wanna leave, that are these issues that I'm bringing up now? Is that coming up in conversations you're having?
It's coming up in observations of specific neighborhoods in San Francisco.
Okay.
From the pandemic, buyers have really kind of changed what their needs are. Buyers have become a lot more discerning. Buyers are a lot more specific in what they want in a home. Many of my buyers who never would have considered Midtown Terrace or Miraloma Park or Forest Hill, these are fabulous neighborhoods that feel a bit suburban, and they feel very safe, and you don't see traces of homelessness in these areas. These areas are getting a lot of activity. We're seeing multiple offers come through. We're seeing a lot of preemptive activity. I recently had a client check out an off market in Midtown Terrace, and they really loved it. We wrote on it. The seller came back and wanted a lot more than what my clients wanted to pay. So we said no thank you, or they said no thank you, and we lost out. We found out that very house went $200K over what my clients had preemptively offered. Another opportunity had come up, and this is in the same neighborhood, a little smaller, and the agent said, we're not going to take any early offers. But I called her back and said, my clients fell in love with the house. Would you be offended or insulted or hate me forever if we brought in an early offer? And she said, well, what's the offer? And I said, X, Y, and Z. And she said, let me talk to my clients. She spoke to her seller. The seller came up a little bit more as they countered us. And my clients will be getting the keys to this beautiful house in Midtown Terrace, which is the center of San Francisco, very beautiful neighborhood, in about 2 weeks. So the bottom line is, certain areas are a lot more in demand that weren't as coveted pre-pandemic. People are looking for safer sanctuaries where they're going to feel more at home and comfortable walking their dog at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night.
I'm having similar conversations, but from a decision standpoint of whether to enter the market, whether they're a current renter and they want to finally get on the property ladder, or they were outside the city and now their job's coming back and they're thinking, well, you know what, this might be a good time to buy in the city. But the thing that holds them back is, this very topic. What is going on with the social structure and, the overall, just how the city's being held together. And that's obviously in a state of decline, whether people want to acknowledge that or not. That's just the fact. It is, especially in specific neighborhoods. Not that the entire city is, but specific neighborhoods are.
Right.
And that's impacting people's decisions to buy. And I think at least personally, I touched on this yesterday in a separate conversation. That is, if I was buying here to live, I think I could dismiss some of that stuff because I've got a strong reason or desire to live here, right? It's for my work or it's because of a lifestyle thing, and I'll deal with the other things that come because the beauty of San Francisco and what it has to offer and my proximity to work and all that outweighs some of the negative.
Sure.
But as an investor, someone that's thinking about, do I invest in this market or do I invest in other markets? When I'm thinking about tenants and I'm thinking about, attracting more tenants, quality of tenants, what's going to go on. I don't even live there, so I've got to deal with things that are going to come up as a property owner. I think that's where I'm feeling the hesitancy from clients because of these issues. They bring it up. Like, I would invest there, I would do a 1031 exchange, but I don't like what's going on in the city, and that problem is going to become my problem. It's already hard enough to be a property owner and deal with tenants in a state like California, but it's specifically in a market like San Francisco. The deck is stacked against you, and you've got to have some stomach for it. But now when you throw these issues in the mix, I feel that there's a lot of hesitancy from the investor.
Sure.
Does that make sense to you?
It makes complete sense. I mean, many investors who are my clients are saying, you know what, let's sell and let's move into another market where tenant issues are not going to be so aggressive, where we actually have better control over our own properties as far as who can be there, how long can they be there, etc. So for a lot of my clients who are investors, they're selling, they're doing a 1031 exchange that they bought a decade ago. And they're moving it into other markets like in Portland, Seattle, Nashville. They're just getting out of San Francisco. I have other clients who are investors who are buying property for their children. They love San Francisco. They love the beauty of this magnificent town. They want their kids to have an apartment or a condo or a flat when they're in their 20s after college. And they understand the whole buy and hold concept. Like, if you buy in San Francisco and hold for a couple of decades, you will for sure profit. You won't make as much every month, right? Your income coming in from these investment properties are not going to be as fantastic. But in the long haul, when you do sell it 2 decades, 3 decades from now, or your children, inherit it from you, that's a different situation. So San Francisco, I think, is a great buy and hold city for investors as far as getting income and dealing with tenants and certain tenant issues. It can be really challenging.
It can.
And with the homeless issue, right, certain neighborhoods are more riddled with this unfortunate situation that's happening, especially now more than ever during the pandemic.
So we've got homelessness, as we touched on that, and then there's been, the other byproduct, the unfortunate byproduct or consequence of COVID is that it's resulted in business closures. We see a lot more commercial space that's for lease, and of course these things will turn over. Like, they go through their iterations, right? They go through their cycles. But with a lot of business closures, particularly in the service space, right, like the food and beverage industry, restaurant closures, are owned by owners who typically also own their real estate, because you deal with a lot of these clients, and I see it because we do a lot of lending for self-employed borrowers who own businesses or restaurants. So if those businesses have been affected, we're hurting that buyer pool. And they employ people who rent in the city because they want to rent where they work. Or they're trying to very much. They want to get in here. So the business closure fallout and what's happened, and we don't even know really yet. The dust is still settling on that aftermath. I think we'll see as the labor market kind of shakes itself out throughout the rest of this year, is going to be a telling sign for how that segment of this housing market, housing meaning renters or buyers, is going to play out. So we'll see. We've got social issues. We've got just the issues of what COVID has caused. But it's a story that I think continues to evolve, and it's a fluid space. There's not just, it's over, and, even though it's far from over. I mean, we've got a variant that's running wild, and we've got mask mandates that are already back. Like, it's hardly over, but it's been so much time that I think people have a false sense of security and thinking, well, that's past us, and things are going to be fine. We're going to have to wait and see how these things all shake out. But to be continued, it's a conversation we'll continue to have, and I think it's important for viewers, buyers, sellers, renters, aspiring investors to just be thinking about these things, because we know they affect decisions that people make. So we want you and the audience to have that information as well.
That's right. And if I could add one thing.
Please.
An old mentor of mine once said to me, Michelle, there's the right way the wrong way, and the San Francisco way. And what she meant
I
by
thought you were
that,
going to say my way.
yeah, the Arjun way.
No,
what she meant by that is San Francisco is truly a unique market. It's a beautiful city by the bay. It offers all the amazing cultural things you could imagine: ballet, symphony, opera, historic buildings, incredible food scene, right? Because of that, despite the pandemic, despite our social issues, there are people who absolutely just want to live in this vibrant city. And how do I know this is still happening? I have a handful of buyers who are out there on a scavenger hunt looking for the right home. So that gives me confidence in this market, and I think it's going to do great this year, next year. People just want to find a place to plant their roots, and if you know that San Francisco is for you, it's going to continue being very desirable. So Arjun, I have a question that comes up time and time again.
I might have an answer.
I think you will have an answer. I like to work with buyers and sellers. I currently have a handful of buyers right now who don't have a huge down payment. They say to me, Michelle, should we continue saving money so that we can afford the house that we want, so that we have the right down payment? Or do we just settle for something less that we don't want? Our interest rate's gonna go up next year. What do we do? So that being said, Arjun, do you have any tips for buyers who may be in this predicament where they want to buy a home, but they don't have a huge down payment? What can they do?
So it's a conundrum a lot of buyers face, and they will ask, do I wait, or do I, just try and enter the market now? It's always a personal decision. There isn't a right or wrong answer, but I think you have to factor in what is that cost of waiting. There's a cost for doing it now, but there's also a cost for waiting. So you have to weigh those out, and that's how you mitigate your decision. Cost for waiting, what I mean by that is, yes, we have historically low interest rates now. They're not going to stay low forever. There's lots of trends and data and even announcements that are speaking to how they're going to incrementally start to rise. So the home that you're looking at now that's priced at $1 million, we'll use it as an example, that home is going to be priced at 1.15, let's say 12, 14 months from now. It's going to be a much more expensive home. And the cost to borrow money to purchase that home is going to be a little bit more expensive. So while you might have waited to save an additional 10% because you only had 10% saved up now, you're doing so at the expense of a more expensive house and a more expensive rate of borrowing. So I tell clients, especially in a market like San Francisco, where the trajectory, or in the Bay Area in general, where the trajectory of real estate in terms of its asset price is always going one direction, and that's up over time. Sure, there are blips and periods where things might flatline, but where things are going to continue to ascend, real estate will always be a safe bet for you regardless. So getting in with 10% down, there are options for you. Some people think you can't do 10% down. Well, here's the truth. You can borrow, and I was telling you this earlier and you were shocked by it, you can get loans up to $3 million where you've put down just 10%. So we have such jumbo lending product out there. And what type of buyer qualifies for that? Some people are like, well, I don't want to just put down 10%. You don't have to. If you want to put down 20%, you can. There's lending for you all day. But for those people that maybe have 20%, but they'd rather hold on to some cash and use a smaller down payment because they want to be very strategic and intentional with their money. Maybe they're getting a better rate of return with some of these funds and they would rather appropriate them elsewhere as opposed to sinking every dollar into their house. And I'm more of a strategic lender anyway, so I don't just tell people, here are your options. That's what you can go into a bank for, or you go online. You enter in information, it spits out something to you. I need to talk to you and have conversations with you about money, your money more specifically, and how do we protect it? How do we preserve your other investment and saving strategies? So we need to look at your money, see how much of it you want to allocate, how much you don't want to allocate, are there better opportunities for that allocation? And that's how we formulate a mortgage strategy instead of just dishing out loans. So long-winded answer to your question, there are costs of waiting or deciding to buy. You don't lose if you get into the game now. You might have a slightly more expensive payment, of course, because you're putting down less, but if you're okay with that, you're gonna ride a wave of appreciation and let the market do the work for you to build up that equity. You can always restructure your financing later. And maybe you've got other things you just wanna apply that money or those funds towards. So I'm a big fan of people being more dynamic as opposed to so linear or going with the big bank strategy of X amount of dollars down, here's your loan, here's your rate, great.
I like that. And I think because you have these creative products, it's really beneficial to the buyers out there, right? Every buyer has different circumstances, different goals, different needs.
I tell people this, the right mortgage strategy with a competitive interest rate and good product will always trump the lowest rate with the wrong strategy. And that's really important because some people think consumer behavior has everyone trained and programmed, you know, and sometimes you don't do this as an agent, but there are a lot of agents who just say, here are 3 lenders, call them and shop around for rates. That actually is an absolutely terrible advice. You might be doing what you're required to do, or what is maybe is it a RESPA rule to hand out 3 or give people 3 options, but you're basically encouraging the commoditization of the process, which is to find the cheapest thing. And sure, that's great for the consumer in the short run, but it could be the wrong strategy because you can always get a lower rate. I tell people, you can go online, just keep finding. You'll just find a lower rate and a lower rate. It's probably coming at the expense of greater cost, or it might be a terrible strategy for you because that rate and cost structure may not even apply to you depending on what your story is.
Right.
You may not want to be in that property for a long time. Maybe you do want to be in that property for a long time. Maybe it's a midterm hold. So whatever your story is, and you know, it comes back down to the individual client and their story. That's where we're going to formulate the right strategy. So we try and be really intentional about it, a little more holistic, broad-based approach, and instead of just being so linear.
And I think this is what separates you from the other lenders out there. Most lenders are like, okay, X, Y, and Z, this is what you should do. You listen to them, you ask questions, and you come up with the best game plan for my buyers, which is why I like my buyers to work with you.
And I like working with your clients for that reason.
you.
So the mindset's aligned.
Yes, for
Yep.
sure.